Considered to be one of the greatest athletes of all time, Martina Navratilova won 18 Grand Slam singles titles, or 59 total if you include her illustrious doubles career. But Martina's impact reached far beyond the court, and to this day she remains one of the few superstar athletes to come out during the height of their career. Martina sat down with our own pioneer for women's sports, Leslie Visser, to discuss her experience and the importance of remaining true to herself.
Growing up, did you ever think that you'd hear or see of something called Pride Month?
Well, anything that had to do with gays, lesbian, homosexuals, it was, you couldn't even talk about it. You wouldn't even see it in print. We weren't considered human. We were subhuman. The fact that we are much more visible, the same-sex marriage becoming legal 6 years ago was a huge milestone. But at the same time, there still has been backlash, and there still are states that can fire you just for being gay. So it's still not where we should be or could be, but of course we are so much further ahead than we were when I came out in '81, or certainly when I was growing up in a communist country in the 60s.
When you came out in 1981, that was a very different time. What questions did you have to answer for yourself? What went through you?
Well, I was wondering what the fans' reaction would be. My family already knew. I didn't know how the world would react. And that's why I broke down in the finals at the US Open in '81.
Martina Navratilova, come forward, please.
When I lost to Tracy Austin in the finals, and when they gave me the runner-up trophy, the crowd kept clapping, and they kept clapping, and they kept clapping. I realized it didn't have to do with tennis. It had to do with acceptance and welcoming me as an American citizen. Whether I was gay or not, it didn't matter.
I would like to thank every one of you who was pulling for me. I really didn't expect as much support as I did get. Thank you.
So that was pretty magical. That's why I started crying, not because I lost the match. It was about the crowd reaction, and I felt that I belonged, and I was safe. I was an American citizen now, and you don't mess with me. I had my American passport.
You hadn't been an American citizen. Was part of waiting until you got your citizenship?
I stayed in the closet in that I didn't talk about it one way or the other. I certainly never denied my sexuality, but I told the reporters I can't talk about it until I get my citizenship. So that's exactly what happened. And I wasn't too worried. I still thought I would be okay, but you don't want to take that chance, right? Because I was very invested here. I felt at home in America, and I wanted to belong desperately.
Well, as you say, you were very much accepted. I was at that match in '81, but it was such a different time. I mean, can you just measure that distance from when you came out, you were the first superstar athlete to come out, to like a Megan Rapinoe?
So I was hoping that's exactly what it would be one day, but it's not an issue one way or the other. It just is what it is. But certainly in my time, I was the first active athlete that came out. I think there were only like two that came out after they retired. A baseball player and a football player, but it was still a no-go zone.
What did it cost you? I mean, everyone had endorsements, commercials. What did it cost you?
Well, it cost me those. I lost millions of dollars, but I've said this many times in speeches around the world and interviews. Money you can always make, and that's not the end-all be-all. I kept my dignity. That was more important to me than any endorsement that I could possibly have.
You've been a social activist your whole life. What legislation do you think right now this country needs to protect the LGBTQ community?
It starts with the Voting Rights Act and goes right down the line to all the protections to everyone, including trans people. We have to be humans first, and that's not the case yet. So we need stronger laws and protections across the board.
You mentioned the transgender community. A couple years ago, you felt it was appropriate to apologize because you'd inferred that maybe they were cheating. What are your thoughts today on transgender athletes?
Where do you start? It's a very complicated issue, as many trans experience puberty. Therefore, the bodies are male, for male to female transition. And how do you erase or take away that advantage that is built into the skeleton, into the blood supply, into the chest capacity, oxygen carrying capacity, and not to mention strength, of course. So it's a very difficult situation. the ideal would be to have maybe 3 categories: male, female, and then all open. And you can it's all open. There's no barriers whatsoever. But when it comes to women's sports, we fought so hard with Title IX and and getting the sponsors, etc., on the women's tour, tennis tour, on the golf tour, to get that recognition, to get that opportunity for women and girls to compete. And now we're fighting again for fairness, and it's just heartbreaking, because I so want the trans people to feel welcome, to feel included, of course. But what are you gonna do? Everybody come in, however you identify, and you can compete. That's not fair.
Martina, you've been one of the most elite athletes in the history of sport. What do you see as your responsibility to the LGBTQ community?
I first saw myself as a role model for kids, because there were many times that I wanted to throw my racket because I was upset, and I'm like, no, there are kids here. I can't be doing that, because I want to be a good role model for them. And so it is with being an LGBT person that's representing the community, because that happens to minorities, right? You kind of represent the community whether you want to or not. So you feel that responsibility, and you just want to represent everybody well, and particularly the LGBTQ community. So I've just always, again, never apologized for who I was. Try to give that strength to others. Maybe they don't have it internally. And, if you're uncomfortable with who I am, then that's your problem, not mine. And I'm not going to be less than to make you feel comfortable. So I just live by that axiom, and it served me well. And I hope that I've done the LGBT community proud as well.